The next question, Brother Mohsin Bashir from Kashmir, India. What should we follow when there is difference of opinion among the scholars on a particular issue? This question is related to the earlier question, that what should we do and who should we follow if there is difference of opinion among the scholars. Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Nisa, chapter number 4, verse number 59, Atullah wa atiu Rasul. Obey Allah and obey the Messenger. And those who have been endowed with knowledge, those who have been giving the commands. That means talking about the scholars. Obey Allah and obey the messengers and obey those who are knowledgeable, those who are the scholars. Ulil Amr. But the verse doesn't end there. The verse continues. But if they differ, go back to Allah and His Rasul. That means you have to follow Quran and follow Sahih Hadith and the scholars. But if the scholars differ, go back to Allah and His Rasul. All the scholars say you should pray 5 times. There's no need of going anywhere. Pray 5 times. All the scholars say they should fast during the month of Ramadan. No problem. All the scholars say you should give 2.5% zakat in most of the cases. Okay, follow that. When there is difference of opinion, and if scholars differ, the Quran says, go back to Allah and His Rasul. Now, when the scholars differ, what should a person do? For this, I would like to give an example. Depending upon which level do you belong to, your decision will be based on that. I remember when I was in school, when I was in the primary school, for us, for a child in the primary school, teacher is always right. Irrespective whether the teacher is knowledgeable or not, for the child going in primary school, for him or her, the teacher is the most knowledgeable in the world. And I remember in the primary school when my science teacher told something, and I told my father, my father, he was a medical doctor, he was a psychiatrist, he had done his post-graduation in medicine. And when there was a medical issue and I told my father said that, this is wrong. I was adamant, no, my teacher cannot be wrong. That time I was a kid, 7, 8 years old, not knowing that my father is a medical doctor. But for me, the teacher is always right. Similarly, when a child is in primary school, for him the teacher is always right. So for a person who has no knowledge of deen, or maybe is a beginner in deen, who is a revert, or maybe who has not studied at all, he may be an elderly person, but did not study deen at all. So I would consider him to be in the level of school level. So for him, he should catch one scholar, consider him to be teacher, and follow that is the safest. Whichever scholar he believes. But that is for a person who has limited or no knowledge of deen. Normally, the fuqahas, they divide the Muslim into 2 levels. One is the mujtahid, a scholar, and one is the non-mujtahid. I divide normally into 4 levels. There are different levels of division. I would count a person who has bare minimal knowledge of deen, bare minimal, or maybe a revert, or maybe he's elderly but no one taught him really about the deen. So I would call him a person who's in school, bare minimal, the lowest level in the Muslim. The highest level I would call as a scholar or a mujtahid. And today, in today's world, there are very few mujtahid, very few scholars, maybe a few hundred, very few. All the dais that you see giving talks and all, very few are really scholars, very few. The highest level is scholar, the lowest level is just a beginner. The second level from top, I would say, is a student of knowledge. So most of the du'ats are students of knowledge. For example, the person who has studied deen and spent years studying the usul of fiqh or the hadith or tafsir, you can call him a student of knowledge. Student of knowledge may differ. He may be a graduate from Islamic University. He may be a postgraduate, done his master's. He may be a PhD. Just by getting a PhD degree, you don't become a scholar. Can become, but chances are less. Scholar is a different category altogether. Allah has given him the sense of analysis, of understanding. He knows all the usuls and has the element of hujjah, etc. That's a different level. So scholars are very few in the world, maybe a few hundred now in the full world. So these are students of knowledge. In the students of knowledge, there are various categories: low level, medium, high, very high. PhD may be a very high level, but yet a student of knowledge. And a person may not have gone to university, but he might have spent months and years discussing with the top scholars and fuqahas. He may be more knowledgeable than a PhD. And in my organization, in Islamic Research Foundation, when I was in Bombay, and the school itself, we had more than 500 employees, out of which about maybe 25 of them were graduates, postgraduates, and PhDs from foreign universities. Mostly from Islamic University of Medina, some from Imam Muhammad bin Saud University, some from another university, maybe 25 of them, bachelors, postgraduates, and PhDs. Then we had another 30, 40 people who have passed from the Islamic universities in India. Some have done the IFTA, some have done the Alim course, some are Mufti, another 30. So totally we have about, 50, 60 people. All of them I call a student of knowledge. There were some who were in the research department who did not pass from any of the Islamic universities, but they spent years in doing research. For me, they were more valuable than the masters and the PhDs amongst my staff. They were very knowledgeable, they could argue, they could quote the hadith. They didn't go to any Islamic university, but the level of understanding of deen was much higher. So the salary was higher even than the PhDs who have done their doctorate from the Islamic University of Al-Fajar, etc. Even from Medina. And none of my staff I would call, not even I'm not a scholar at all, I'm just a student of knowledge. So student of knowledge differs at different levels. That is the second category. The third category, above the basic beginner, is those who have knowledge of the deen but may not have studied to a great extent. But because today it's easy to acquire knowledge either by internet or by social media, they have interacted, but not to the level of a student of knowledge. So I would call them in 4 levels. One is a scholar, a mujtahid, very few in the world, few hundred. Then you have the student of knowledge. The student of knowledge have various categories, lower level, medium level, high level. Then you have the people who have knowledge of the deen, but may not be called student of knowledge, but they know quite fair. And one is a lower level, just the beginner. If you're a beginner, you're like in the school, catch one scholar, follow him, that's the best. You don't have that. If you're a student of knowledge, and if the scholars differ, they have to analyze, go back to Allah and Rasul, go back to the evidence given by these scholars. So if 2 scholars differ, the student of knowledge will actually check that what is the evidence given by scholar A and what is the evidence given by scholar B. He himself may not be a scholar, but he has the basic knowledge of at least analyzing the evidence. And no da'i, unless he is a scholar, should give a fatwa. I never give a fatwa of my own. What a da'i can do, he can read the fatwas of the scholars and then he can agree with one scholar more than the other scholar, saying I agree with this scholar more because the evidence he's giving is much more reliable than the other. I feel this evidence. Now, depending upon what level of student of knowledge are you, can you agree? But naturally, for a very low level of student of knowledge, then it may not be right for you to judge which of the scholars is correct. But you are on a high level, you can. Those who are on the third level, who have knowledge of the deen, what they should do, they should ask a student of knowledge that these 2 scholars are differing. Who do you think is more appropriate? And based on the evidence they give. So basically, you have to go back to Allah and His Rasul, see the evidence in the Quran and the Hadith. There may be chances that some scholars, they have made mistake out of ignorance. They were uninformed. Some said because of difference of opinion, various things. So if you analyze and then make a decision, so if you are a student of knowledge, you can analyze the evidence given by the scholar, then decide which scholar is correct. If you are the third category, you can ask a student of knowledge or ask a scholar, a third scholar, which of the 2 evidence is more appropriate, and hear their reasoning, and based on that you can decide. If you are the 4th level, just hardly knowing the level of deen, you catch one scholar, follow him blindly, there's no other option. But naturally, he should not be a fake scholar. He should be a scholar by its true sense. And if you do that, you have no other option because your knowledge is very low. in the deen. These are the options we have, but as the Quran says, go back to Allah and Rasul. We have run out of time. That was the last question that I could answer. Just to give information, inshallah, that there will be a program next Saturday, but it will be only Ask Farik. Till then, we meet inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.